Okay, perfect. You guys ready? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randeep Sarai. I'm the Member of Parliament for Surrey Centre, British Columbia. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. We're here on the traditional territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen First Nations. Today, the Honourable Marco Mendicino, Minister of Public Safety, will deliver remarks to highlight our government's new firearms legislation, as well as federal support for crime prevention and community safety. He'll be joined by my colleague Sukh Dhaliwal, Member of Parliament for Surrey Newton, Parm Bains, Member of Parliament for Steveston Richmond East, and a number of gun control advocates who have fought fearlessly for stronger gun control. To give you an overview of today's event, we will first hear brief remarks by Minister Mendicino, MP Dhaliwal, Heather Lynch from Options Community Centre, and Eileen Mohan, who tragically lost her son, Christopher Mohan, as part of the Surrey 6 murders. Minister Mendicino has been an ally for Surrey, whether it was as a parliamentary secretary for justice or infrastructure, or whether he's been the Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees, and now as Minister of Public Safety. Whether it was to get safer community funding for the Surrey Safe program, the $7.5 million that funds a lot of prevention and intervention programs, whether it was banning assault rifles, whether it was increasing funding for CBSA and RCMP so that we can intervene on many of the guns that are coming across the border. Minister Mendicino has been a champion, along with my colleagues Sukh Dhaliwal, Parm, and many others from here in Surrey. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Marco Mendicino.
Thank you. Thanks, Randeep. Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, Randeep. And I also want to thank you for the Indigenous acknowledgement. And I also want to thank my friends and my colleagues, Sukh and Parm, who are here and part of the amazing team of MPs representing Surrey. It is good to be back. I want to take a moment also just to acknowledge Heather, who is here as a great champion as part of the SAFE Coalition. We were here not too long ago. And obviously, Ms. Mohan, Eileen, it's a true honor to have met you this morning. And just given the subject matter that we're about to speak about, I just want to say what an incredible inspiration you are. And thank you. The one thing that has been made clear to me over these last number of months, and indeed throughout my time as a Member of Parliament and now as Minister of Public Safety, is how important and how crucial it is that we tackle the scourge of gun violence. On Monday, our government introduced Canada's most significant action on gun violence in a generation. Bill C-21 represents a milestone amidst a long and difficult battle which takes place on our streets every single day. It's a battle that has claimed too many lives, leaving empty chairs at the dinner table and empty desks in the classroom. And as we talk about it, I want to take you a little bit back to February of this year, when a handgun, was found at an elementary school here in Surrey, Bothwell. Sadly, this wasn't the only time that parents here in Surrey and other parts of the Lower Mainland had cause to worry. Shanna Harris Morris, 22 years old, was shot and killed in her own home in Surrey last year. Jagveer Mali was just 18 when he was shot dead at an intersection in Abbotsford in 2018. Paul Bennett was a nurse, a hockey coach, and a dad. He was killed in his own front yard in Surrey the same year. Wilfred Wong, only 15 years old, was sitting in the back seat of his parents' car in East Vancouver when he was caught in the crossfire. There's nothing that we can do to bring back any of them, or Chris, who we lost 15 years ago and whose birthday it was just yesterday. But with Bill C-21, we can do everything in our power to prevent the next tragedy. It represents a comprehensive suite of measures that will have a significant impact. First, we are introducing a national freeze on handguns. What this means is that on a go forward, no one will be able to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns. In 2020, handguns were used in 3/4 of violent crimes and 60% of homicides. For the last decade, we've seen approximately 55,000 new handgun registrations enter into the total universe of that market each year, representing about a 75% increase in that market over the same period. We're putting an end to that trend, and we're not waiting for this bill to pass to take action. We've also tabled through our regulations amendments to the Firearms Act regulations so that we can bring the effect of the freeze into action as quickly as Parliament can and is willing to do so. And that's why I'm urging all members of Parliament and indeed all parliamentarians to read this bill, to debate this bill, and to pass this bill as quickly as possible. Second, Bill C-21 tackles organized crime head-on. If you're in the business of trafficking guns at our borders, you'll face stiffer sentences under the criminal code. If you alter a magazine or cartridge of a gun to exceed its lawful capacity, you'll face new criminal charges. And if you're involved in organized crime, you're going to face new police authorities like wiretapping laws specifically related to gun offenses under the code to stop gun crime from occurring before it can. Furthermore, Budget 2022, which we introduced earlier this spring, dedicates additional funds to the RCMP and CBSA so they can build on the record number of illegal firearm seizures which were made in 2021, doubling from the year before. And I know we're not far from the border here, and I know that this issue is very much top of mind in Surrey and indeed in BC. In March and April, I visited both the Pack Highway and Peace Arch crossings where CBSA is using new technologies, thanks to federal funding, to stop smuggling, like a new facility where an entire truck can be x-rayed in a matter of just minutes. We'll continue to step up our defenses to stop gun trafficking and to protect our borders. The third thing that I want to highlight that Bill C-21 does is addressing head-on the alarming rise of domestic abuse and violence in connection with guns. During my last trip to BC, I spent time with women's groups at shelters in the downtown east side, and I heard directly about the impact that guns have on gender-based violence. I don't think that any woman who's ever come into my shelter had a gun, said one advocate that I spoke with. And she continued, but I know that all the fellows they'd been with do. The bill will help to prevent individuals with a prior or current restraining order from obtaining a firearms license and will automatically revoke the licenses of those with a new restraining order. Bill C-21 would also introduce new red flag laws, allowing courts to remove guns and suspend licenses from someone who poses a danger to themselves or anyone else. And after meaningful conversations with women's groups and other advocates, we've made sure to enhance these red flag laws by protecting the identity of those who come forward to see that those guns are removed from individuals who pose those risks. And just last week, I issued a new mandate letter to the Commissioner of the RCMP with specific instructions to ensure law enforcement's response to domestic violence is immediate, particularly when a gun is involved. There are other provisions within Bill C-21 that address things like straw purchasing, replicas, and the glorification of gun violence, which can taint a young person's mind. These are responsible, common sense measures that all Canadians can get behind. And again, I'm calling on all colleagues in the House and the Senate to look at this bill, to study it, and to pass it as quickly as possible. Of course, Bill C-21 does not exist in a vacuum. And even if we pass it, it does not represent a foolproof solution that can 100% guarantee the prevention of every future gun crime. But it is part of a comprehensive strategy that includes other significant steps that we've taken, like banning AR-15 and assault-style rifles, which we did 2 years ago, because, to put it simply, these types of guns have no place in our communities. I also confirmed that we will be launching imminently the first and important phase of our mandatory buyback program for AR-15 and assault-style rifles, with an industry-led consultation to set up a compensation scheme for the mandatory buyback program. And as challenging as it is, we are determined to start the process of buying back those AR-15s and assault-style rifles by the end of this year. We're also taking steps to stop gun violence before it starts. And as I said at the outset of my remarks, I was here not long ago to meet and to speak with the members of the SAFE Coalition right here in Surrey. And I was very happy to have the MPs and community leaders who are here at that table with us, where we provided significant federal funding to get at the root causes of gun violence. And in addition to that funding, and since then, I officially launched the $250 million Building Safer Communities Fund. In partnership with community leaders, we're helping young people make good choices and set themselves up for success in life. We'll be accelerating the rollout of the Building Safer Communities Fund over the course of the summer. Over the past few years, we've already supported these efforts in BC with some $30 million in federal funding. And right here in Surrey, as I said, we're supporting the Surrey Anti-Gang Family Empowerment Program, or SAFE, which helps young people who are at risk of going down the wrong path. Friends, in our efforts, we must be both resolute and realistic. As I said, this is going to be challenging work, but I'm very much looking forward to doing this work with my friends, my colleagues here in the House of Commons, in the Senate, and with amazing community leaders and those who have been so uniquely and profoundly impacted by gun violence, but who still show the courage, the tenacity, and the willingness to be a voice for change, for powerful change. And again, I just want to close by thanking you again, Ms. Mohan, for joining us today. Merci beaucoup, and I will turn it over now to my colleague, Sukh.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Randeep, for being a younger brother-like friend and always a supporter to bring in a difference in people's lives in Surrey. Even though, Parm, you got elected last year, but you've been involved for many, many years, long before you got elected, and happy to see you here as well. I echo Randeep's comments about Minister being here to Surrey many, many times. It's not only that he's here to show up, but I can tell you that over the last many years, he is passionate to make a difference in the lives of people in Surrey and in the neighboring communities. And that's one reason I can tell you that I call him my friend. Minister, thank you for your work for our residents here. And today we are here to have an announcement where Minister is making an important announcement that's going to help in Surrey and in the neighboring communities. Just 2 days back, there was a body found in the park of a victim of a violence. When I go around, and I'm sure same with Randeep, people in Surrey are saying that gun violence is disproportionately affecting the people in Surrey and in the neighboring communities. And that is why this Bill C-21 is very important, and I'm fully supportive of this bill. When it comes to gun violence, and we go to the families, when it comes to domestic violence, guns are key there as well. The families get affected. Earlier, we were talking in a round table. Ms. Carr from the city mentioned, that this not only affects the couples, but in fact, it brings the trauma to the kids, which causes other reasons for people to get involved. So this is the key when it comes to stopping the gun violence, particularly dealing with the domestic violence in our community. The other reason we see is importation of guns, illegal guns flowing in our communities. It is very important to control that aspect as well. As Minister mentioned earlier, that we are allocating twice as many funds to deal with that situation, hiring more RCMP officers, hiring more CBSA officers to deal with illegal flow of guns and making sure that we have stiffer penalties for people that deal with trafficking and smuggling of guns. So freezing on handguns, Minister, I, along with my colleagues here in Surrey, fully support it, and I'm certain that other members of the House of Commons will support this legislation as well. Rhetoric in politics is cheap, but loss of life is not. Ask Ms. Mohan. 15 years ago, she lost her son, Christopher. And there are many others, Minister mentioned, that have been the victim of gun violence. So I would encourage the community around here as well, to come forward and tell their members of parliament that they should support this whole holistic Bill C-21 and make a difference. And thank you again. And I will pass on to my younger brother-like friend, Randeep Sarai.
Thank you, Sukh. Thank you for your kind remarks. I will next ask Heather Lynch from Options Community Service to say a few words.
Good afternoon, Minister Mark Mendicino and our local hardworking MPs and our community partners are here today. It is a privilege to be here on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people and specifically of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, and Kwatlam Nation. My name is Heather Lynch, and I'm the Senior Manager of Options Community Services. My role is supporting our youth services, counseling services, and Fraser Health Line care teams. Options is a large multi-service agency that supports the South Fraser region by delivering over 80 different programs spanning from prenatal to senior supported services. Over the last few days, we've heard and witnessed the unveiling of the federal government's new plan for Bill C-21. The bill refresh is intentional in supporting the safety of Canadians by implementing measures that support stricter access to guns and also addressing intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and self-harm involving firearms. Over 50 years, Options has been in the business of supporting children, youth, and their families to thrive with the offerings of services such as intimate partner violence support, youth employment, crisis intervention, housing, early childhood counseling, and settlement services. At Options, we have witnessed a rise in the need for more intimate partner violence supported services. For example, we saw a 10% increase of women coming into our transition homes seeking refuge for safety. Also, one of our domestic violent programs targeting abusive men exceeded expected targeted numbers by 166%. This does demonstrate the need for more supported services in this area. Supporting young people is at the heart of our agency. Last year, Options provided services to over 3,500 youth, which includes 2 gang intervention programs and one of an employment program that we are grateful for the funding of our federal funders. It is a sad reality that we are seeing too many of our young people losing their life due to issues related to intimate partner violence or young people that are coerced in the gang conflict. 19-year-old Maple Battaglia gunned down by her ex-boyfriend here at the parking lot at SFU. 16-year-old Jason Singh Jutti and 17-year-old Jesse Singh Bangal shot and killed, and their bodies found in the Campbell Heights area. 14-year-old Tequil Willis gunned down in Guilford after getting out of a taxi. And just 2 weeks ago, we supported a family along with 6 other community partners in supporting this family and relocating out of the province. And their young person, their son was stabbed and shot at their home. These examples of our young people senselessly murdered demonstrates a need for a bold response. Bill C-21 is not the only solution to keeping our community safe, but it is a necessary piece to the puzzle of enhancing public safety. This bill must be delivered in tandem with evidence-based collaborative approaches if we want to experience positive outcomes in relation to intimate partner and gun violence. In addition to Bill C-21, we require culturally relevant services such as our SAFE South Asian Family Strengthening Program, sustainable funding to support demonstrated successful collaborative programming such as our Child and Youth at Risk Table, partnership of 10 community agencies, an increase of restorative programs that address intimate partner violence, such as a pilot project that involves options and 3 other community partners in addressing intimate partner using a holistic and restorative approach, and also new funding for early intervention and prevention programs that are designed to increase protective factors of our young people so they could experience successful life outcomes. In closing, I would like to applaud Minister Mendicino and his teams and our Prime Minister for implementing their goal with BC21, and I am optimistic that this bill will support the health of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. I would now like to ask Eileen Mohan to come and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your invitation. For the last 15 years since my Christopher was taken, I have always advocated that every elected official's first and foremost duty is the public safety and security of its voters. And I'm so glad and so proud of our Prime Minister that he put his political career, his personal, professional life into introducing this bill that we do not need to sell guns in our country. And I was waiting for 15 years for someone to stand up against guns. And today is a victorious day. Yes, it won't solve most of our gun problems of illegal guns and making guns by mail order, but it is the first step. Like New Zealand, if we first clean our backyards, then we can put other procedures and processes into place so that it will save lives. And I applaud the Prime Minister and I applaud the Minister for bringing this to us and to Canada. And I know that it will be a life-saving act and policy, but most of all, it is wonderful to know that our leaders are thinking about its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Very very important to hear your words and as somebody who's actually lived this experience. I now ask Alex Cohen to come forth, and now we'll do the media questions round. For those that were wondering why we were taking pictures, we were actually doing voting on the Hill, so it was not selfies.
Thank you to the members of the media for joining us today. I will now have a question and answer session. There's a microphone back there if you'd like to ask a question, and just state your name and the media outlet you're with.
Great. Aaron MacArthur, Global News. Question for the minister. Spoke to a gun shop today. Since your legislation was proposed, they did a month's worth of sales in one day. Did you not see that coming? Is that not counter to what you've just said here today?
We absolutely are alive to that concern, and that's precisely why we did two things when we tabled the legislation. One, the bill itself, which contains the provisions of the national handgun freeze. And secondly, at the same time, I tabled amendments to the regulations under the Firearms Act, which allow us to bring those effects of the national freeze even sooner than the legislation will pass. The only thing we need is for Parliament to get down to work, to read this bill, to debate it, and to pass it as quickly as possible. And what I have said to all of my colleagues is that I will take a call at any hour of the day. It's too important. You've heard from people like Ms. Mohan, and I've spoken with families who have been impacted by gun violence, whose lives are forever altered. The problem is urgent. The problem is one of national importance, and we need to make sure that we pass this bill as quickly as possible, precisely so that we can have those effects come into play.
As a follow-up, speaking with gun owners, gun advocates, your legislation it does target some of the other issues we're talking about, but it targets legitimate gun owners. Most people in this country never have a crime committed with their firearm. Why go after people who, by and large part, abide by the laws of this country?
Well, first I would say we respect the fact that the vast majority of gun owners are law-abiding. They follow the rules, and they respect as a paramount value safety. I don't accept the stereotype that this legislation goes after them at all. What it does do is it takes on very directly organized crime, and it does that in some very specific ways. Number one, it will raise maximum sentences for those who attempt to illegally traffic or smuggle guns across the border, going from 10 years to 14 years. Second, if you're in the business of trying to terrorize or harm a community, you need to know that police are going to have additional powers. I talked about that in my remarks as well, by providing them with investigative techniques like wiretap powers to stop gun crime from occurring in the first place. And the last thing that we're going to do to take on organized crime is to continue to give police the tools that they need, the boots on the ground, the equipment, the resources, and the technology, so that they can keep our communities safe. That's what's squarely targeted in our bill, and not those law-abiding citizens that you referred to.
If no one else has a question, I have one more follow-up. There are already stringent measures in place for transporting restricted firearms like handguns. Is that not sufficient? I mean, it is a criminal offense to stop on your way home from a gun range, let's say. It's a criminal offense to not follow the letter of the law as it is. Could implementation or enforcement of the laws already in existence not do much of what you're asking Canadians to do now?
Just last week, Statistics Canada came out with a very alarming report that showed that the trends are all going in the wrong direction, that gun violence is up, that handgun violence is up, specifically that gender-based or domestic violence is going up in conjunction with gun violence. And we need to put a stop to those trends, and we need to reverse them. And so despite the fact that, yes, Canada has in place a set of rules which are very stringent already, it's not enough. And, you know, it gives us no pleasure to say that. I mean, it is among the most difficult and challenging things to speak with Canadians who, again, have been directly and negatively and forever impacted by gun violence. But they are truly the motivation and the inspiration behind this bill. When you speak to Ms. Mohan, when you speak to the families of the Danforth tragedy in my hometown in Toronto, when you speak to the families of the Quebec City Mosque, when you speak to the families of Polytechnique in Montreal, this is their life's work. They have dedicated their lives to pleading with the government, begging with the government to do what is necessary to eliminate gun violence. And no, passing Bill C-21 does not represent a foolproof strategy, which is why we need to be doing a number of things at the same time. Number one, passing smart, progressive, and common sense measures like those contained in Bill C-21, including the national freeze on handguns. Two, investing in our law enforcement to stop illegal trafficking at the border and in our communities. And three, working with communities like Heather at SAFE and others to address gun crime at its root causes, looking at the social determinants around access to safe and affordable housing, healthcare, and education. You should not have to worry about sending your kid to school and worried about whether or not there might be a gun there. And that's what this bill targets, is doing all those things together. So you're right, there are rules in place, but we're taking the next and most significant step that we've taken in a generation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, there's one more.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just one question. Hi, Minister. My name is Parmeet. I'm from Red FM. My question is regarding the rules, regulations which are already in place for the people who already have a gun license. Will you be revising those rules for themselves as well? Because as you have already mentioned, people who are danger to themselves surrender their weapons. So if people are shy about their mental health, would they be surrendering their license? And if they have already gun license, would you be doing something about it?
Well, for those individuals who are struggling with mental health or in any way pose a threat to other people or themselves and who are in possession of gun, Bill C-21 includes red flag and yellow flag law protocols, which allows anyone to go to a court, to a judge, and to ask the court to suspend the license or to take away the gun given that risk. And likewise, working very closely with chief firearms officers across the country, what we're aiming to do is if somebody is currently subject to a restraining order or could be subject to a restraining order in the future, to make sure that those firearms licenses are taken away, precisely to protect our communities and to tackle the very alarming trend that we've seen around the rise in domestic violence in connection with gun violence.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.